Hi Pat, how are you today?
Hi, Richard. I'm fine.
Uh, you're Pat
I
Brown,
am. I
and
am.
you're
Have
married to
been.
Daryl Brown, who's
Yes.
been big in our associations. And what was your maiden name?
Bax. B-A-X.
Ah, okay.
It's
Uh,
Italian, but it dates back to when the northern people came down and invaded Italy, and so while the name is Italian, it is actually English more
or
in
Basque.
its yes, in its history, according to some aunt who was into genealogy.
Did you play nude or skinny dip when you were a girl?
No, I did not.
What was your first introduction to nudity?
My first introduction to nude recreation or nudity was my husband. He was a nudist. He loved it. When he was in college, he worked at one of the fire lookouts in Oregon and spent his entire summer nude at the fire lookout. And when we moved back to Portland, we went out to Rooster Rock, and which is a nude beach on the Columbia River. And he just thought he had died and gone to heaven. He just absolutely loved it. And I sat there. I can still remember what I had on. I sat there and thought, there is no way I am going to take my clothes off and go frolicking in the sand. But I envied him his ability to do that. It looked so comfortable. It looked like such fun. But I simply could not bring my mind to do it. I couldn't just take
How
off my
long did
clothes
it
in
take
front
you
of
to
people.
do it?
Years.
Really?
Yes, I was not. I hear these stories. People say they come out to the club and they take their clothes off and they go into the pool and they just instantly are nudists. Mine was not the case. I went topless for a year and a half, and finally got to the point where I would lie in the sun so that I didn't have tan marks. But I would say 2 or 3 years.
Oh.
I was not an instant natural nudist.
What was the first club you went to? Organized club? Landed?
I've got the message. I'm just trying to think. The first club I believe that we visited was Squaw Mountain in Estacada.
Yes.
And I say that because we spent that summer visiting several clubs. We lived in Portland at the time, and so we visited several Portland clubs. We also visited Mountaindale, which was Russell Haven at the time. But I think Squaw Mountain was the first one.
Okay.
And we visited Bronson, which is in Washington.
Right.
And then came down to the Willametons. I was working in a print shop. I'm a graphic designer. And I was working in a print shop, and the print shop printed the Russell Haven's newsletters. And that's where we found out about the clubs, and from there we found out about the Willametons down here. And so we drove down and spent a day down here, and I loved it. I mean, once I had visited the Willametons, it was the landed club of my choice in this area.
So it was the first club you joined.
Yes.
Do you remember what year that was? Or
Nine.
how long ago?
Yes. 1984.
Okay.
Because the Willametons was hosting the AANR convention, and they gave us a tour, and they told us not to come back until after the convention because they were busy.
Oh. That wasn't nice.
Well, it wasn't that they were rude about it. It was just that they were truly very tied up in getting ready for the convention.
Okay. How long was it before you joined the Willametons?
We joined that year. We joined right away.
And you have children.
I do have children. We have children.
Did they come along with you in
No.
those days?
No, my children were in their college years. My children were grown, although they were still living at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to think, they visited. I mean, they came down with us a couple of times, but it wasn't anything that they were particularly interested in. They went to Rooster Rock with us a couple of times too, but it wasn't something that they didn't object to it. It just wasn't their thing.
Now, your daughter lives next door.
She does.
And has for some time.
Yes.
Yes.
All three of my three children have no problem with it. My son rarely comes down. My son has a congenital birth defect, and he's very self-conscious about it, and he won't get nude. And Daryl's three children have all been down here. None of them have ever joined. My two girls are members, but they're very open to it.
Okay. How about siblings or close friends? How did they feel about it?
I never had any problems. My sister teases me about it. Like when I would lie out at my mother's pool. Well, it was, I mean, it was a condo. It wasn't her private pool. And my bathing strap would fall down. My sister used to joke about the fact, well, she probably has more clothes on than she's used to wearing, or this type of thing. I mean, Kathy would joke about it. It's not Kathy's thing. But I mean, she didn't. She accepted that it was mine.
You weren't nudist then when Daryl was still in the Air Force? And
No,
going
we
around
were
the
not.
world?
No, we were not.
What was the first club out of the United States that you went to?
That's a good question. I am going to say it was, well, we have attended all of the AANR conventions every year since 1990. And I'm going to say the first club that we visited would have been Laguna in outside of Sacramento.
Okay.
Cypress Cove maybe in Florida, but I think it was Laguna.
When did you join ASA or AANR?
I joined AANR when I joined this club. This is a 100% AANR club, and they require AANR membership, as they should. I think that it is I think that it's our responsibility to protect and support those things that are important to us. And if nude recreation and the future of nude recreation is something that is important, then I think that it is just as important that we support it by being members through not only our voice but through our dollars.
Do you recall what the culture of ASA AANR was at the time?
You know, yes and no. I'd like to say that it's changed, but I don't find a big change in it. It changed from a long time ago. I mean, you go back into the 50s and the 40s, and yes, you know, people would pick at the gate, and what we were doing was very wrong. But by the time I joined, that element didn't exist. It was as accepted, I think, as it is today. What I did find different was the traveling. Today we seem to belong to a club and we stay there. We put larger units on our sites at clubs, and it isn't just the Willametons. I know that you can see this here, but it is that way at most clubs. And so we're not doing the traveling, where when we first joined the Willametons, a group of us, you know, 3 or 4 couples would go up to Bronson, or we'd go to Restful Haven, and we'd spend the weekend and we'd attend their events, and they'd come down and attend ours. So there was a lot more camaraderie between members of other clubs, rather than this is the club I belong to and this is where I go and these are the only people I know and the only things I do. That is a pronounced difference from when I first joined.
Do you recall what the relationship was to ASA and AANR as opposed to what it is now?
I'd love to be able to analyze a big difference, but I don't see a big difference. I know that there are some people who feel that AANR is there to support the big clubs and is not as interested in its members. But I never was somebody that could jump on that bandwagon and say that, per se. I think that supporting the large clubs and being there for the large clubs helps encourage members. I mean, if we're going to have members, we have to have a place for them to go. You can't just say, come out in the woods with me and look at a tree. You need the facility, you need the pool, you need the cafe, you need the lounge at night with the bar, with the DJ, with dances. We need to be able to give our members something, and so therefore supporting and protecting large clubs that provide that for members is something I think AANR should be doing. I think that it's right in being in the business of helping big clubs.
Can you talk a minute about what AANR's relationship with members, particularly members who got into trouble, was?
AANR has always been there to support its members, and we defended members. Now, when you say got into trouble, that's a pretty broad thing there. If you're talking about, I mean, for example, we had a member who was arrested because they felt that he was doing inappropriate things with her daughter. It was not his child it was his child by marriage. It proved to be very much not the case, and AANR hired a lawyer and supported him, saw him in court, and protected him. And in fact, AANR has always been there to do that with members. It's part of why we pay dues.
That's exactly what my question
It's
aimed at.
very much one of the things that AANR provides its members, is that protection when falsely accused.
What caused you to become more involved in the governance of Willie's, of Northwest Association of Nude Recreation, and of the American Association of
And
Nude
that's
Recreation?
exactly the progression it took to what you're explaining, from the Willies to AANR Northwest to AANR. I have always believed, well, for one thing, I've always been a person that got involved in things that they believed in. I mean, if this was something I was interested in, it's something I wanted to do, I wanted to learn more about it, I wanted to be more involved. I don't feel that we should just sit back and let somebody else protect those things that are important to us. And so I wanted to be involved. I wanted to help. I wanted to help protect it and make it safer and do what I could do to support AANR's mission. So in that sense, it was a natural progression. It was actually a member of the club that got me involved in running for office at the AANR Northwest level. I ran for office at the Willie level because they created a new office, and that was certifying officer. The treasurer used to do both functions, and when they created the certifying officer position, I ran for it.
Tell me what that person does.
The certifying officer is the liaison between AANR and the club. They maintain the membership records, they notify, and they send the AANR dues to AANR. They are that liaison. Mail, official mail from AANR comes to the certifying officer. In our case, it goes to our office because we have an office on grounds.
What was your next position?
I went from being certifying officer of this club to being vice president of AANR Northwest.
Okay.
Don't ask me what year, I'm not good at that.
Okay.
But I think that I ran for club office in the very early 1990s.
Okay.
And then ran for AANR Northwest, and then served as vice president for 2 years, and then ran for president of AANR Northwest, which I seem to balk at running for president. When you look back historically at it, I balked at running for president of AANR Northwest. I can remember saying, this is not something I'm prepared for, this isn't something I want to do. There has to be other people that can do this better than I. And so we had a dear, sweet member who has since passed away stand up and announce at the meeting that she was going to run for president. And although she was dear and sweet, she was in no way qualified to run for president of the region. And so I gave up and said, okay, I'll run. And I was elected. And then I went from there to a trustee or director of AANR. This region elected me to represent them on the AANR board, and then to running for AANR president.
Your husband Darrell sort of accompanied you on this journey. He was an officer of Willie's and of Northwest, and I think ultimately AANR also. Am I correct?
He was never an officer in AANR. He was a committee chair, finance chair. But he was an officer in Willys and an officer in AANR Northwest. You are correct there.
Tell me about some of the
Treasurer.
awards.
He and I are very different. He
Yeah.
does the money and the numbers. I do the stand up in front of people and hip hip hurrah type thing. He is the background person doing all the things I could never do. Yes, tell you about the awards.
Tell us about some of the awards you won.
I joked to my daughter, this could take the whole hour.
I felt the same way.
There is no award that I am aware of that I am not the holder of.
Okay.
The Meritorious Service Award that the AANR president gives, I have received every year since it was created by Greg Smith in 2001. I think it was the year before I was elected president, and I was elected president in 2002. But I have received it from 3 different presidents, and I have received it all those years. I received the Jim Cousins Award, which is given to outstanding volunteerism. It's actually an award that's funded by the Midwest, but it's given by AANR.
What's the one you're most proud of?
The Hall of Fame.
Okay.
The Hall of Fame Award is the highest award that AANR can give to a volunteer. And when I received the Hall of Fame Award, it was at Live Oak, it was at Oak Lake Trails in Oklahoma. And Jack Dupree, who is, he's probably the longest living, I shouldn't say that if he ever watches this, AANR member, and he goes back in history, and he can tell you all kinds of wonderful humorous stories about things that happened in AANR that I couldn't begin to do. But he and his wife were sitting at a table out in the audience when I received that award, and after the whole ceremony was over, I walked up to him and I said, I have never received an award that just surprised the hell out of me. I mean, you're always pleased and proud when you are given an award. I mean, when somebody recognizes what you've done as a volunteer, that's a very pleasant thing. So when I say I never received an award that I didn't expect, it isn't that I'm sitting there in the audience expecting the award. I'm sitting there in the audience saying, I could have won that award. I'm eligible for that award. I could get that award. So when I received the President's Meritorious Service Award or the Jim Cousins Award or Newsletter Editor Award or anything else, you name it, it was not shock and awe. It was pleasure, but nevertheless a certain amount of expectation that I would be eligible for that. But when I received the Hall of Fame, I told Jack, I said, I don't get this award. This award goes to people like you, people that have been around. I mean, there's only 3 or 4 living people that hold this award, and I'm still alive. But so it was a humongous surprise. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it in my lifetime. So yes, definitely the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
That coupled with the fact that it weighs 2 tons. And so if you're going to wear the thing around, you have to be prepared it clangs against
Be on
everything.
the
It's
chest.
this big, it's solid metal, and it clangs on everything.
When you first went to the AANR board and ultimately to the presidency, were there problems in AANR or in the nudist community at large, or in the world's vision of our associations that you felt needed to be addressed?
Yes, and they changed. I mean, they changed drastically as I gained more experience and changed positions. When I first was elected to the AANR Board of Directors, I felt a very strong allegiance to my region. I felt I was going to AANR to represent the Northwest. And although I realized that there were people there from all different kinds of regions, and I was looking at the problems we had in our regions. I was looking at the things that we wanted to see happen in our region. And because our region is unique in the sense that it is almost 100% co-op clubs. We do have a couple of proprietor clubs, but we are the only region that is constructed that way. Most of the other regions are mostly proprietor clubs with a few co-op clubs. And so I looked at AANR's function differently than some of the other people on the board. I looked at needing more guidance from AANR on how to run a club, how to manage a club, because of the co-op club experience than I think some others. As I gained office and gained experience, one of the things that I began to feel strongly was how the board functioned. When I took over as president, it was one of the first things I did was we went through a year's course and had lecturers come in on governance and how a board functions. You know, our board would spend an hour debating what color envelope we were going to mail the bulletin out in, but something really important would just get passed because nobody wanted to discuss it or be an expert in it or do anything with it. And I wanted to see the board be doing more governance than they were doing, and let the office take over that administration that they should be doing. That became a big issue to me, and it was quite frankly something that I thought I was going to be able to accomplish a lot more doing as president. But just before I took over as president, a motion was passed that allowed associate members to hold office in AANR. And so in addition to having members who represented clubs, regions, we had members who didn't have to even belong to a club. They could just be an associate member of AANR, and they could run for office and they could vote. And so what happened was we had regions with thousands of members. We had club owners who had vested their life savings. This was what they did for a living, was to run a club. And we could have one person come forward and change the whole vote by casting thousands of associate votes. It created a real problem in AANR, and there was no way of undoing it once it happened. Once we had given the associates the vote, you weren't going to get the associates, who now carried the majority of the vote, to vote against giving themselves the vote. So they literally had the power to walk away with AANR, and that became a crucial situation that had to be fixed, which was why we created what became known as AANR Tomorrow, but why we created the division of club trustees and member trustees, doing away with that associate trustee having so much power. And so we had a board of 14, 7 of whom came from clubs of various sizes, representing the clubs of various sizes, and we had 7 that came, 1 from each region representing the region. Ideally, we wanted to do away with the regions. I mean, I will take full acceptance of the fact that that's an extremely unpopular concept, but eventually that is what we wanted to do. Because I don't feel that boards should represent geographical locations. We have one region in AANR that has less than 1,000 members, one region. That entire region is smaller than clubs we have in AANR. And so we end up with one man being able to go to the AANR board and cast a vote that represents the same amount of vote that comes from a region where you have thousands of members and thousands of represented votes. And I don't think it's right. I think that an association is hampered by that kind of geographical representation. I think what we should do is vote for what is the best for AANR. We should want to see what is the best for AANR, what is the best for nude recreation, what is the best for you and I to be able to enjoy the future of nude recreation, not what is best for the Pacific Northwest because we happen to grow big green trees, or Florida because we happen to have palm trees and a lot of big clubs. I think that it's what's best for nude recreation, and so I am a strong supporter of the elimination of geographical representation in regions. But that was the kiss of death. It would have never, AANR Tomorrow would have never passed if we had tried to take geographical representation out of it. So that's how we ended up with, and quite frankly, I think that's why I received the Hall of Fame. That's how we ended up with the member vote trustee and the club trustee.
What do you see that still needs to be done at the AANR level?
Doing away with geographical representation.
That you think is the biggest issue?
No, I don't think it's the biggest issue. I think that what has to happen, and if somewhere in there you're going to ask me how to do it, I'm going to plead, I have no idea. I think what has to happen is the acceptance of nude recreation. The other day on television, I mean the other day, 3 days ago, maybe not even that much, on ABC News, because I think that's what I listen to in the morning, they had this little thing on Biden, Vice President Biden, who swims in the nude in his home here in Washington, D.C., and in his home in Delaware, I think is where he lives. The Secret Service being uncomfortable with this, especially a female Secret Service agent. And I was left with the, oh, tell me another one. This is a Secret Service agent who happens to be a woman, and she is offended or bothered by the fact that Biden swims in the nude. And it wasn't just that, it was what the reporters did. It was the little giggling that went on about the fact, well, I can sure see how she feels. I don't think I'd like to see him in the nude either, you know, blah. And it's like, I would really like to see the world just accept what we're doing, even though it may not be for them. I mean, I'd like to be able to get on a plane and sit next to a little gray-haired lady, which I realize I am a little gray-haired lady, but somehow I always think of the little gray-haired lady as being older than I am, and have her ask me where I'm going, and be able to say, I'm on my way to a board meeting for the American Association for Nude Recreation, and not have to give a second thought to the fact I'm saying that this woman is going to be offended, and oh my God, did you say nude? It isn't that I want her to have to come with me. It isn't that I want her to ever enjoy nude recreation. I just would love to see it get to the point where what we do is not laughed at. What we do is not, well, you know where she lives, it's out there. And so that's what I'd like to see AANR do. And of course, AANR's been trying to do that for years. And I know that there are members in AANR that will tell you that we've been successful and that we have better acceptance than we did. But I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. I don't see it. I may see it among officials, county commissioners or this type of thing that have dealt with the clubs and know they haven't been problems, and the Chamber of Commerce, where you're a part of the community and you're supporting the community like other members of the Chamber of Commerce. But I don't see it with my next door neighbor. I don't see it in the little nurse at River Park that's taking care of my husband. I mean, I don't see the change. I don't see the improvement, and that's what I'd like to see.
What do you think needs to be done to keep AANR and its clubs growing with members into the future?
I'm not sure that AANR is going to grow, and I don't mean that negatively. I guess I'm just looking at statistics. In 1950, the 1950s, 5% of households had joint incomes. 5% of our households had a husband and wife who both worked outside the home. And today, 80% of our households have husbands and wives who work outside the home. It's unusual not to have dual incomes coming in. And not only do they have dual incomes, but they have computers. And they have those smartphones that are like baby computers that won't leave you alone. So no matter where you go, 24 hours a day, you are tied or can be tied to a working situation. And you know, when I was first married and my kids were young, I cooked and I cleaned, and at night I watched TV with the kids, and we played and with my husband, and on the weekends we'd go to the beach or we would do things. Those evenings and those nights were my time, because anything else that needed to be done got done during the week, because I hate to say that was my job. That sounds real old world, but that was what I did in essence for a living, other than the few years I worked. It allowed us to have a lot more discretionary time. So on Wednesday night, if I wanted to go to a meeting, or if I wanted to volunteer for the PTA or the garden club or whatever it was, I had the time to be able to do these things. I had the time to play Officers' Wives Club bridge. I had the time to do all this. Today, people don't. They don't have the time. So when you talk about growing AANR, where are you going to get the people that have the time to be able to commit to something, and I don't care how much they believe in it and how much they want to see it happen, it's a matter of time. They just don't have the time. When they say, I don't have the time to volunteer, ARP is having the same problem with its local chapters. ARP as an association is getting bigger because we've got a lot more older people who support ARP because ARP supports us. But the local chapters that do all that work, those local chapters are dying. They're going out of business because they're having exactly the same problem that AANR is. We just don't have the people to volunteer. And that, and I think that AANR is, oh, how do I put it? It needs to be able to specify its mission. I think we are trying to be too many things to too many people. Years ago, the AMA had 75% of all physicians belong to the AMA. Today, less than 25% of physicians belong to the AMA.
Down to 5%.
It could be. But it's because there are specialties. There are rheumatoid arthritis specialties, and there's all these little specialties where they can get exactly what they want without belonging to the greater thing. And AANR doesn't do that. I think that AANR is trying to answer to too many Indians, is what is happening. And I don't think it can do that. I think we need to specify our mission much tighter. I think we need to close in on what we're going to do and who we're going to represent and how we're going to represent them, and stop trying to be everything to everyone. We cannot represent members and clubs and do everything that everybody wants us to do and do it effectively and efficiently. I don't think. But that's just one opinion.
How do you, and maybe you don't want to answer this on tape, how do you feel about the movement to bring the Naturist Society together with AANR? Seems to be gaining momentum.
It seems to be gaining momentum, and I'm not crazy about the idea, but I'm not crazy about the idea because of some personalities involved, and that's very unfair. I need to get over the involvement of certain personalities. But I think one of the problems goes back to what I just said. I think we need to narrow our mission. I think we need to narrow what we're going to do. Yes, joining forces with the Nature Society would make us bigger, but I don't know that it would make us better. And I truly mean I don't know. On the surface, it sounds like a great idea, but I just somehow think that tightening in and being able to answer the needs of a select group of people effectively is better than answering the needs of a large group of people ineffectually.
Do you see that, or do you feel that bringing them together would strengthen GATT and the defense of our nudist rights through one pool of resources?
If GATT was where we chose to go, if GATT was where we chose to take AANR, if that was the direction that AANR went, then having a larger pool of people so that you could go to some congressman or some senator and say, we represent 200,000 people or 85,000 people rather than 35,000 people, and have that be more effective, well, then yes, that would be. And is that where we want to go? I don't know. I'm not saying that I necessarily think that we want to take AANR in the direction of GATT. I don't necessarily want to jump on a bandwagon just because the world jumps on it. I don't jump on the youth bandwagon either. I'm that red ant out there that doesn't feel that the youth are our future. Obviously, the youth are our future. I mean, if we don't get younger people involved in AANR, we won't have an AANR, but that doesn't mean we have to have younger people involved in AANR that are younger today. When I joined AANR, I was in my 40s. When my daughter joined AANR, she was in her 40s. Our most effective members as far as participation and activity goes seems to be those people that are in their mid-40s or early 50s, in that age group. And so in that sense, to me, yes, those youth, those 45-year-olds are definitely our future. I mean, obviously you and I aren't our future. We're going to die off the vine and somebody else is going to come along. But I don't think kids are our future. I'm not buying that. I'm not buying that little children running around or 20-year-olds are necessarily our future, because I don't see them joining. I see a lot of money and a lot of effort being put in for years and years and years trying to attract young people. But it isn't what we're about. We bore them to a greater degree than.
Okay.
And I do think that you know, if I could wave a magic wand, I would like our future to be involved in GATT. I would like to be able to protect. But where I'd like to see AANR go more than anything else, like I said, is the acceptance, the understanding. I'm not personally so worried about government affairs, which I think is a terrible name, by the way. It used to be GASP, and we got rid of that because GASP was definitely not a, and ended up with GATT. But I don't think most people know what government affairs is. I wish it had a name that was perhaps more descriptive of what we do. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure that that is necessarily where AANR wants to go. I don't see the big problem in government affairs. It used to be that we had much more of a problem with anti-nudity bills and testifying and doing all of this. This has not been a big problem in the last several years. At this point, I realize we need to be protected and we need to protect our members. But I'm not sure that anti-nudity legislation is something that is paramount. I'm not sure that we're sitting right there on the radar screen of somebody's mission and proposed legislation. Oh, let's go get those nudists. That's a good target. I don't see it.
Do you feel that that the protection of a wife or a husband in a divorce custody battle, and one of them attacks the other as, oh, she's taking my child to a nudist resort and exposing her to things that are inappropriate, protection of those people, do you see that as a GATT function?
I see that as an AANR function. And if you want to put it under the greater auspices or the greater umbrella of GATT, yes. But I look at GATT as more legislative.
I do too. How would you feel about GATT being called protection of nudist rights?
I'm not sure that I like protection of nudist rights. I like the fact that GATT is an easy thing to say. I just don't think government affairs necessarily, perhaps legislation or something in there. I don't know. I haven't given thought to what I would like it called.
Do we need to reach out to do more with Canada?
I'm going to say no, but if you're talking about government affairs, it is not my strong area of expertise. I mean, I never served on the GATT committee, other than as an ex officio member. There are other associations that represent Canada. We primarily represent Western Canada. The middle of Canada and the eastern half of Canada are represented by other associations. And from time to time there has been discussion of absorbing Western Canada. It's small, they couldn't find a place to hold their convention, they don't have enough members to be able to really effectively do anything. And absorbing them into AANR Northwest as a region of AANR would be a good fit, is what people say. And that has happened in other regions. In the Midwest, there are some clubs that are Canadian clubs that are part of the Midwest Nudist Association, and the same in the East. I think most of them are in the Midwest. I'm going to say that, and it could be wrong. The problem with it is how Canada feels about it. We as Americans are very accepting of Canadians. We think of Canada as being like us. We think of, they speak the same language, they think the same things, they eat the same food, they're like us. Canadians don't feel that way. They don't have the same mindset. They feel very strongly their Canadianism. And so that would be my hesitation as to how how much Canada thought that absorbing Canada or assimilating Canada was a good idea, and how the members would feel about such a move.
How have you felt about the non-landed clubs?
I have found that in my time in AANR, there are a lot of prospective members who don't understand the meaning of non-landed clubs. And therefore, if you ask them if there is a club anywhere near them, they could have 5 non-landed clubs in their backyard and no landed clubs, and they would say no. However, non-landed clubs have been a lot of prospective members' first entry into nudism. Their dues are far less because they don't have land to maintain, and their activities are far more important to them because it's all they have. They don't have the camaraderie of being able to lie around the pool or go to the dance at night or do any of this. So the activities that they plan in traveling, wine tastings, staying in different accommodations in different areas, walking the beach, what have you, become far more important. So I'm not sure where you're going with how do I feel about landed, non-landed clubs. I think that they offer a good introduction to nudism for a lot of people. I myself would not be interested in a non-landed club because I didn't join this club for activities, and I'm not a big activity participator in. How's that for a backward sentence?
It appears that the new board intends to pursue the possibility of members of existing landed clubs forming non-landed clubs, like all the people from here who go to Phoenix every winter, form a non-landed club in the Phoenix area, so that you have more activities to do down there in the winter when you're there, but also in the hopes of getting them to come to the landed clubs as their place to play, and then ultimately getting some of those members.
I think on the surface of it, it sounds like a very good idea. Obviously, our new president is from a non-landed club. Her Arizona Wildflowers has been a large non-landed club and a big influence in the Phoenix area for years and years. I think it's a good idea in the sense that it introduces people. A lot of our members have come to us from non-landed clubs. The non-landed clubs plan a party weekend. In essence, we're going to go to Willie's, we're going to have our meeting, we're going to go to the dance, and so a dozen of them or so will come in and spend the weekend here, and it is their introduction to the club, and that introduction, then they end up joining. So we have picked up, landed clubs pick up members from non-landed clubs. As I said before, non-landed clubs are a less expensive entry into nude recreation. So in that sense, I think that it has potential for introducing people to what landed clubs have to offer and what nude recreation has to offer. Explaining non-landed clubs to prospective members and getting them involved in non-landed clubs is a little bit more difficult, because they expect a club to be a club. They expect a club to look like this. And so a non-landed club is a little bit more difficult creature to explain.
Do you have any regrets about your time in leadership at any level of the associations within AANR?
No, I don't. And I don't because if I could snap my fingers and go back and do things all over again, would I do things differently? Maybe. I mean, probably I would do things differently, but I am so not a person that lives in yesterday. I just don't. It is, some people would say it's a good aspect of my personality, and some people would say it's a bad part of my personality, but I don't even necessarily like to see things through. I work to get something passed. I get the thing on the table, it's set up, it's going to go, it passes, and let somebody else work out the minutia and get it to work. I want to be on to something else. I like the creativity of it, and I'm not a historical person either. I'm really bad with dates and history and what happened, because what happened I know history is a wonderful thing, and we can learn not to make mistakes today by learning what happened in the past. I understand all of this because my husband is such a history nut and firmly believes in this. But it isn't an aspect of me. I want to go to tomorrow. I don't want to go to yesterday. And so in that sense, I don't think of, oh gosh, I would have done that differently. There are some things that I am very proud that I did. The first year that we proposed AANR tomorrow, which would have divided the board as it exists right now, I had the vote. I had the vote through sheer politics. I carried the support of big clubs and big club owners, and when I first started volunteering in AANR, I had a very wise guru friend who told me, because I was running for office, and he said, if you cannot go into the room and tell me exactly what the vote is going to be, either for an issue that you are championing or an office you're running for, then you don't deserve to be doing it. Part of running for an office is to know what your chances are of winning. And so I knew I had the vote. I had counted the vote and knew I could pass it. But there were a lot of people that didn't want to see it happen. Just plain and simple didn't want to see it happen. And so although it would have passed and it would have existed, it wouldn't have made some people happy. And so I chose to withdraw it. And I called a couple of the owners of the big clubs that were very supportive to my cabin, and I explained to them that I was going to pull it, and they argued why, and I believed it was the right thing to do. I wanted it not to just pass by a majority vote. I wanted it to pass with happiness. I wanted people to be happy that we had made this decision. And so I spent a year advertising it, a year publicizing it, a year traveling to clubs and explaining what this would do, and then we threw it on the floor and it passed by almost unanimous vote. And I was very happy that I made that decision. I believe it was the right decision to have made.
One of the functions I've seen you and Daryl both do over the years here at Willamington's as be the authority for the rules and for Robert's Rules of Order in all of our meetings. How do you feel about
I love
that?
Robert's Rules of Order. Anybody that plays bridge or chess has got to enjoy Robert's Rules of Order. It's a game. If you master Robert's Rules, I mean, obviously, seriously, Robert's Rules of Order was devised to run meetings efficiently. It was devised to give the majority the vote, but give the minority the voice. And that's just what Roberts does. In that entire book that nobody wants to read, that's what he does. He gives the minority a voice and the majority the vote. But everybody has the opportunity to speak their mind on things. And all of the little nuances of Roberts to me are a game. Daryl was the Roberts expert. He really was. He took Roberts in college. He took a class in it. I never did. When I was elected president of AANR Northwest, I had this little cheat sheet plastic card thing for Robert's Rules of Order, but I knew very little about it. And so I bought the book, and I sat and read Robert's Rules of Order. It's very boring to read. And then I had this man who was my nemesis. I mean, he delighted in getting me zap at a meeting. He would come prepared. And so I knew that he was going to be there. I knew what he was going to do, and so I would research that whole element of Roberts so that I knew it backwards and forwards. Once I actually went to him prior to a meeting, and I told him, you are going to challenge my ruling. And when that happens, this is what I'm going to do. And when I do this, this is what you can do if you want. Read it. Before you stand up and challenge my ruling, you read that. And he did. And we used to play games. Oh, God, we really didn't like one another too much. But we had a lot of fun playing Robert's Rules of Order games. So yes, I think Robert's Rules of Order is very important. I know a lot of people think that it's a bunch of minutia and it just takes up time at a meeting. But it doesn't. If you follow it, things go much more efficiently.
I know you're comfortable in your own skin because you were very upset that you couldn't be nude in this interview.
Well, not very upset would not
No,
exactly
that's
describe
too
it.
strong.
It was just such a gorgeous day, and I see everybody wandering around in the nude, and I'm sitting here dressed, and they're thinking, okay, she's fully clothed. It would be so comfortable not to have, but this is pretty loose. It's not, I can't complain too much.
What is it about Willie's that's made it so popular that it's the largest club in the Northwest?
You know, that is an excellent question. It is really an excellent question because it is by so much the largest club. We are 100% again, almost 100% again, the largest club in this region. And you can't say it's because we have wonderful trees, because every landed club in the region has beautiful trees. What is it that makes this club so uniquely popular? I think part of it is the fact that our members have always been able to work together for the Willamettans. You go back as long as I can go back, which is 1984, and there are certainly members that can go back further than that. We have always worked together for the club. You have members and you have cliques, but you don't have warring factions. You don't have, we're going to get rid of her and her husband and the whole group that they represent, and we don't have that here. We all work together to accomplish things. We've always worked together for the good of the club. And even though there have been some minor disagreements, oh, I think we should serve hard liquor in the bar. No, I don't think we should serve hard liquor in the bar. I don't like the name of the new cafe. I like the name of the cafe. But we all work together. And I know that people will say we're a friendly club and that's why we grow, but there are other clubs that are very friendly when you go. But if you look historically at the clubs that should be growing but are not growing, there is this history of this old element doesn't want this to happen and will show up at a board meeting and vote it down anytime it comes up, rather than this aggressive cooperation that we have in this club. You know, yes, the bunkies are a good idea because we have a nice place for guests to stay. I mean, anytime we wanted to enlarge, almost anytime we wanted to enlarge, progress, improve this club, our members have been in favor of it. Anytime you talk about increasing membership, our members are in favor of it. Not, well, what element will this bring in? Or we just want this or we just want that. It, I think, is the cooperative element that this club pursues that has been responsible for a lot of the growth.
Can you speak to the growth in our facilities, how that came about?
The majority of the growth in our facilities has incurred through the money that we have gained by hosting conventions. This club has hosted more AANR conventions and more AANR Northwest conventions than any other club. And because we are a co-op club, we do not have to pay for a lot of the labor that goes into preparing for a convention. We have the cooperation of our members who put sweat equity into everything we have, and because of that we are able, I mean, we built the pool, we built the tennis courts, we built sites, we have done a great deal of this through the money that we make from hosting conventions. And our members will spend a year working and putting together stuff and you know, not swimming in the pool or not playing pickleball or not doing something else to get this club ready for a convention so that we can afford the lodge, so we can afford the pool, so we can afford this type of thing.
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi, Willie Wi-Fi. It's a wonderful club, and it's a very pretty club too. I mean, one of the reasons that we joined this club was the lodge, the bathrooms. We have, I mean, the tiled showers and the bathrooms, and I never felt like I was settling for second class because I was going to a nudist club. And it continues to improve and grow and get better every year.
Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, your lifelong experience in nudism and nudist organizations?
I guess what is really important to me is the fact that this is a place where I truly feel comfortable. I feel comfortable nude, just physically comfortable without a lot of clothing on. And I have met and worked with and been associated with some of the greatest people I have ever known through nude recreation. I mean, even the ones that delighted in making my life miserable at the time made it a challenge and were just wonderful people. And I have belonged to a lot of associations over the years. I've been involved with a lot of, having been an officer's wife in the service and this type of thing, I certainly had my share of that. But I cannot think of another experience where I have met so many people that would just go totally out of their way for you. Years and years and years ago, when my husband was in the hospital, and they thought he had cancer, and it turned out not to be. But I came home from that hospital, and I had lived in this cul-de-sac in Gladstone for years and years and years. Not one neighbor showed up to see how Daryl was. I walked into the house, and my living room was full of willies, because they didn't want me to be alone if something went wrong. With Daryl in the hospital this time, it has been the same way. I have had more food. I should be gaining weight. I have had more food and rides and offers of help and anything else that I don't think there is a thing that I could want that all I'd have to do is just say something and I would have it. It has been a wonderful community. It has been a wonderful place to live. And so in that sense, everything that I have spent in energy, everything that I have given to this association over the years by volunteering has come back to me many-fold by the people that I have met and been associated with.